You know, out on the open ocean, sailors have always told stories. Stories about ghost ships found drifting aimlessly with not a single living soul on board. Well, today, we're diving into what might be the most chilling maritime mystery of all time, the strange and terrifying tale of the SS Ourang Medan. So, where does a story like this even begin? It all starts with a desperate call for help, a message that began as a simple plea for assistance, but ended with a transmission that has haunted people for more than 70 years. So, what was it? What was the last thing anyone ever heard from this doomed ship? Just two words, tapped out in Morse code. And then, absolute, deafening silence. That was the final sign-off from the SS Ourang Medan. Okay, let's get into this and unpack exactly how a seemingly normal voyage turned into one of history's greatest horror stories. So let's set the scene. It's February 1948, and we're in the Strait of Malacca, one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. The weather's fine, the seas are calm, everything's totally normal. Until suddenly, the radios on nearby British and American ships just crackle to life with this absolutely frantic signal. Now, you have to remember, this message wasn't a voice crying for help. It was Morse code. Back before we had satellite phones and all that, Morse code was king. Its simple dots and dashes could cut through all kinds of static and travel for thousands of kilometers. It was way more reliable than voice radio. And the message it carried on this particular day, well, it was pure terror. The first part of the transmission was a pretty standard distress call, an SOS from a ship called the SS Ourang Medan. They needed a doctor, and they needed one right away. But before anyone could really even process that, a second, way more disturbing message started coming through. Okay, so this just went from 0 to 100. The radio operator isn't just talking about an injury anymore. He's reporting that people are already dead. After sending out the ship's position, the signal went quiet for just a second, and then came those last haunting words, "I die." And after that, nothing, just silence. So the closest ship to answer this terrifying call was an American merchant vessel, the Silver Star. Its captain immediately changed course, racing toward the coordinates the Ourang Medan sent out. Now, they were probably expecting to find a sinking ship, maybe the aftermath of a pirate attack, but what they actually found was so much stranger. As the Silver Star got closer, they could see the Ourang Medan just floating there, peacefully. There was no visible damage, no signs of a fire, it wasn't taking on any water, but there was no smoke coming from its funnel, and even more unnerving, there was nobody on deck. The ship was like a silent, steel tomb. A boarding party from the Silver Star went over, and what they walked into was a scene from a nightmare. The ship felt bizarrely cold, and there were bodies everywhere, on the decks, on the bridge, in the chart room. Every single person was dead, and their faces were locked in these masks of pure terror, with eyes and mouths wide open. Their arms were all stretched out like they were trying to fight off something nobody could see. Even the ship's dog was found frozen in the middle of a snarl. And this is the absolute heart of the mystery. There wasn't a single visible injury on any of them. And in the radio room, they found him, the man who sent those desperate messages. He was slumped over his equipment, his fingers still resting on the Morse key, as if he literally died the exact second he sent his final word. The captain of the Silver Star knew he was looking at a major crime scene, or at least a massive mystery. The plan was clear: tow the ghost ship to the nearest port and let the authorities figure it out. But the Ourang Medan had one last terrible secret to reveal. The second they attached the tow lines, smoke started pouring out from one of the lower cargo holds, and within moments, a fire just erupted, spreading with this impossible speed. The boarding party had to scramble to get back to their boat, and they made it just in time, because a few moments later, the Ourang Medan was ripped apart by this huge explosion, and it sank beneath the waves, taking all its dead and all of its secrets right down with it. So, with no shipwreck to examine and no bodies to autopsy, you can see why the story of the Ourang Medan started to sound like a legend. Researchers who looked into Lloyd's shipping register, which is basically the global record of all ships, they couldn't find any official record of a ship with that name. For years, most people just wrote it off as a spooky sailor story. But the story just wouldn't die. In 1954, a Dutch newspaper ran an article about it, claiming the ship was probably an unregistered smuggler. And then, get this, in 2003, the CIA declassified a letter that was sent to them all the way back in 1958. This letter laid out the entire incident, and the person who wrote it thought solving the Ourang Medan case could explain other disappearances. The fact that an agency like the CIA held onto this letter for 45 years, well, that gave the story a whole new, chilling dose of reality. So what in the world could have actually happened on that ship? With no physical evidence, all we're left with are theories. Theories that have to explain those terrified faces, the complete lack of injuries, and the ship's final, violent end. All right, let's break down the big 3 theories here. First, and probably the most scientific, is a chemical leak. Let's say the ship was smuggling something nasty like potassium cyanide. If seawater leaked into the cargo hold, it could release a deadly toxic gas. That would cause rapid asphyxiation and would explain those looks of terror. And maybe they were also carrying nitroglycerin, which would explain the explosion. The second theory is even darker, that the ship was secretly carrying biological weapons from Japan's notorious Unit 731. A leak would explain the crew's deaths and why the ship was totally unregistered. And then, of course, there's the supernatural theory, that no natural event could possibly explain the sheer, absolute terror frozen on those dead faces. So here's the bottom line. While the other theories are definitely intriguing, the most grounded explanation really lies in the historical context. The world was just in complete chaos right after World War II. Smuggling of dangerous, unregistered cargo was happening all the time. It is totally plausible that the Ourang Medan was just one of those smuggling ships that met a terrible end. When you really look at all the pieces, the chemical leak theory just seems to check all the boxes. It explains the silent, instant deaths, those horrible expressions of suffocation, and the final explosion that just so happened to destroy all the evidence. It's a tragic but logical end for a crew that got caught up in a dangerous, secret trade. The story of the Ourang Medan is a powerful reminder that no matter how much technology we have, the ocean is still a place of profound and deep mystery. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? As ships sail those same waters today, what other stories, what other silent ships are still out there, just waiting for their secrets to be discovered?